3.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fun video today. We need some fun because of all the energies that are protruding all over the place right now. But we have a dynamic, divine, feminine group here today, and we're going to talk about space arcs. So we have Anina from South Africa. Hello, Anina.
Hello,
We have,
Dana.
yes, we have Alisa and we have Honey. So welcome, everyone.
Thank
So
you.
today we're going to talk about space arcs and what they are, where they came from, a lot of little avenues of information and interest. I know I've watched some videos about them, and it was like 2 years ago, so they almost fell off the grid, off the talking points. But it's good to bring it back and to revisit because there's a reason for them. So we're going to go ahead and start and ask the very basic question, what are space arcs? So any of you can jump in.
Okay.
Uh, Go ahead. Go ahead, Alisa.
Well, it's pretty much in case of a planetary disaster, these ships were created, and they are arcs. They're also time capsules. They hold on to a lot of information, whether it be digital or technological. They hold it in case of disasters or not just disasters, but to bring in a new world. Okay. And it's like a time capsule. You can open it up at a certain time, and the information within it will benefit the whole. Okay. And that's what these are. And I'm aware of 9 of them. Okay. They are massive. Some of them are bigger than states. Okay. Like I'm aware of one over in Crimea, that the Russians were trying to get access to. And that one there is, oh my God, I can't even, it's like 30 miles. This thing is huge. Okay. And they are, in a sense, biological because you have to have certain DNA codes in order to open it, to access it. And whenever these arcs were created, that was its security code. That way, nobody, no matter all through time, could not open it without the correct DNA sequence, so to speak. And now that those beings with those codes in their genes are here to activate them, and they have become active. But yeah, they are pretty much, I don't want to say a survival arc, but they either replenish what was gone or destroyed, or they add to it to make it better for a better future. And where we're at is adding to it to make a better future. So,
yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and with regards to the actual history of arcs, that you were raised in a religious environment. You heard about Noah's Ark from the Bible. So was that a calm? How does that tie into what we're talking about now?
Noah's Ark existed as well.
mhm.
And that was more to do with giants.
Hmm.
But it existed as well. Is the story exactly the same? I don't think so. But we had a huge boat. It is in Turkey. And there is a story I feel like that's been slightly skewed that goes along with that boat. But as far as the DNA and everything, that's usually in the arcs. So I don't feel like I feel like they almost merged the two stories.
Mhm.
And the giants were basically part of the whole Atlantis thing. Like when they knew they were in trouble and we were going to have the great flood, they had a boat. And this was because they were intuitive enough. Noah was intuitive enough. And maybe that wasn't even his name,
Yeah.
but he was intuitive enough to build a boat. But that doesn't mean that they actually repopulated the world with that boat.
Right.
Yeah. So
So
Yeah,
the
that's
arcs
a
is,
whole another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, whether that was actually the story or not. But I believe arcs can be underwater, like a lot of them are
mhm.
underwater, right? Under the ocean. And that they've been waking up, so to speak. Now, I've been thinking maybe that's not waking up, that's just us maybe rising in vibration, that we're actually becoming aware of them because perhaps they exist in a higher frequency. Then yeah, that they are unique, so they have a kind of a captain, and that that person is uniquely designed for that person and no one else. So only their DNA can open it or operate it. And that some people are sort of awakening to this realization that they do hold the keys to some of these arcs, or an arc, and they're starting to wake up and they're starting to get the memories. And I don't know how many there are. Alisa said there's about 9 around the world. Maybe there's
Those
more.
are the massive ones. They're smaller ones, but those are the massive ones.
Yeah, like state size.
Yeah, like state size. Because the one that's in Crimea, that's about 30 miles, so that's not like a state size. But those smaller ones, like Noah's Ark, you know, there was not just one, there was many that were built and done at that time, these smaller crafts. And that was to take the people from that time and move them forwards, not just Noah's family. You know, but yes, they were not as advanced as the arcs that we are aware of, but they were advanced. And because you think about whenever they're talking about Noah's Ark, 2 of every kind of animal, you know, I mean, how do you put that on a boat that he's decides that he's telling in the Bible? That's impossible. Okay. And so it makes more better sense that there was some kind of a laboratory there, science room that has all the DNA, like Honey was saying. That these arcs do hold DNA of all kinds. And you can understand that's why they want to get access to it, because it has DNA in it that we are unaware of and they don't have access to, that are different races that have not been combined in as of yet. Because it's like an experiment. It's a scientific place that where they could do all the genetic facility. That's what I wanted to say. The genetic facility, yeah.
It's like
and there is one down there below Africa too, Anina. You remember Honey and Dayna, whenever they had that weird anomaly, that pulse that was coming out of Antarctica?
Yeah,
and yeah, there's one down there between South Africa and right into going into Antarctica. That's the one you were speaking of, Anita, about under the water. That is definitely one of the most massive ones. It's probably about the size of Texas, if not bigger. Okay. And because it got woken up and interfered with while it was awakening, so to speak, it was sending out these pulses. Okay. And the only thing that I could say was either a distress call or an activation of the core. But most of the cores, they have like a neutron source. I know that sounds a little odd, but it's very powerful. And what it does, it puts off its own heartbeat, if you want to call it that. And a lot of these ships and arcs and so forth, their engines sound like harmonics. You know, like we hear an engine like this here, but it sounds, it's harmonic. And I know that because whenever I went onto the ship, that mothership, I could hear like elevator music everywhere. And I'm thinking, hey, they listen to elevator music. And they told me it's not elevator music, that's the engine. So
wow.
I thought that was really, really cool. Yeah.
I was just thinking just yesterday, you know, the way that the noise of the traffic really gets to me. And I was thinking, what awful sounds, you know, like these trucks and bikes and all of these vehicles are making. Imagine they could make beautiful sounds. I was just thinking about that yesterday, and it's exactly what you're saying now, because it actually kind of interferes with your frequency, the harmony, like hearing all these trucks and bikes, and it's kind of a very low frequency, irritating kind of sound for your psyche. So hurrah to that. I can't wait for us to have cars that sound like beautiful harmonics.
Yeah, because we're supposed to enjoy nature and the sounds and everything that Mother Gaia has, and all of these different mechanical sounds disrupts that. Exactly. So I do know that we're going to go back to these harmonic type sounds. It's going to be more pleasing to the soul and to the environment, you know, and like the roads, you know, getting rid of the roads so that that vibration and that sound is not forced into Gaia, you know. So I do know that they'll replenish a few of them, but for the most part, they'll be gone. So.
Fantastic. Some of them might not make even a noise at all. Some of them may just be quiet altogether. But it's
Absolutely.
amazing that you're saying the largest one is in Africa, or just, south of South Africa. There was something, I saw a video of something that they caught in the ocean that was pulsing, and they were thinking that this may be, some tectonic plates or whatever. And it makes sense that it was actually an arc that was, as you said, signaling something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
They're beyond the ice walls too. So we don't
Yeah.
just have them within. And there's so many more ETs out there too that are just in the process of communicating with everybody that's out there. It's kind of like it's like a living library. So the Akashic Records is like, that's the records and it's all written in light. But these arcs are physical. So they have DNA records for everything.
And they're made of plasma, I believe. So they're very intuitive. I guess you just have to think something, and then that's what the arc do. Honey, quick question that I can't help asking you. Are there any of us that hold the keys for an arc?
I get no.
Okay. I had to ask.
Yeah. And I also get if there was, it wouldn't come through because it's not safe.
Yeah.
At this point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very coveted item right now if they can get hold of the people that has the correct DNA. So, but you're talking about the different races. Well, I do know that there is actually over 100 different races that are at a base at the Guadalupe Islands. Okay, they have a massive base over there, and they are. I was really surprised because I thought that maybe the majority of the differences in races were going to be like off planet. But no, they actually have well over 100 different races there in that facility now that is helping like underwater areas. But I was really, really surprised that there are that many different races in one area.
Wow. The topic of DNA keeps coming up, and I just wanted to touch on that. We hear a lot about DNA, that it's basically the currency of the galaxy. It is the most valuable thing and prized possession that we can hold, far more than gold, silver, we think on an earthly level. And some of the reasons that humanity or the species would need an ark would probably be, like you said, to preserve that DNA. And the reason why was that from the Orion Wars, like what was lost there, and that they realized, hey, we need to never let that happen again and preserve.
Right.
Well,
we're supposed to be like a mix of 22 DNAs, but there's so many more. Yeah, and it just blows your mind to think that we actually have 22 different DNA races within our system. So that tells you that's how many abilities, secrets, identities, lives, experiences, and everything that we've gone through that was placed into us to help us go forwards. And as it gets activated, these different things will come up like, look at there, I have this ability, or I remember that. And it's different things like this here. It starts waking it up within our system to help us with this transition. And the DNA is like Dayna is saying, that's a very expensive, coveted commodity to space. I mean, it is used in trading for experiments and so forth. It's like we went from, all about the gold to now it's all about the DNA, Yeah. So it's like if they've been hunting for gold this entire time, let's just say 500,000 years, I think we'd be pretty, skinny. I would have lost a lot. So therefore, it had to transition from one point to the other, from gold to DNA, to being the most precious commodity. So
we've got such exciting DNA, and then these 22 star races that make up our DNA, they're the result of even more blends of DNA. So as you say, if we really go back, it boils down to maybe 100 races that were the original sort of providers of the DNA, and then down to 22 that actively make up our DNA. And I think we're one of the most exciting species in the universe, even
I agree.
galaxies.
Well, think about the genetics of the ones that's underwater, all those aquatics. I mean, their DNA is not exactly like ours. Do they have 22 different strands of DNA in them too. But what made up their genetics that made them so different from us that they can live in water and we live on land? So, I mean, they're also part of this. Their DNA is also coveted as well. So you think about all of this stuff that's gone on the surface, but nobody's thought about it going on underneath the water.
A whole different world.
A whole different world, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and everything's been intelligently designed. So remembering that the ETs are honoring that. So if you're in the fifth density or above, they're honoring that, and they're not stepping on, basically, they're not creating karma as they learn. Whereas fourth density was creating all kinds of karma.
Yeah.
And now that fourth density is separating, we're going to experience a lot of different things. So I'm excited to see who's in the ocean, because I feel like that could be the first contact.
Let it be me and Aquaman. I'll volunteer.
That's funny.
Or that movie Abyss that you posted on your Telegram, honey.
Yeah.
Great disclosure.
I think there's several species in the ocean, and they come in all different versions too. So mermaids do exist as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they have already let us know that, there's an ocean 8 times the size of the ocean that we have underground, and there's absolutely life in that. Absolutely. So, and I would think logically that would be a perfect place and safety, so to speak, for these aquatics and these mermaids, Oh, but yeah.
But they're actually also from Sirius B, right? That's kind of the origin. All the aquatic
mermaids?
Yeah, aren't they?
Some.
I know the dolphins
only some, not all of them. Some of them.
Right.
Yeah.
I do know that the dolphins were a gift from the Palladians, I believe, and the whales were a gift from Neptune. And it's kind of like if there's a planet out there where people came from monkeys, then and they would take their ancestor, that original version, and adapt it on another planet or another environment to see how it progresses. So that's what I think is going on there with that. So they want to watch their ancestors become what they've become. So, and they plant these in different places to see it. So, but I definitely did not come from a monkey, and no disrespect to monkeys, but they talk about the so-called hominid that was here that they started mixing with. The Anunnaki was mixing with this here so-called hominid. No, that is not true, because whenever they got here, the Terrians, who are the original inhabitants of Gaia. Okay, that's why they're called Tartarians now, but they were Terrians, and that's who they used to mix the DNA with to make their workers and stuff. These people weren't dumb, and they weren't cave people. These were intelligent beings. They did everything more spiritually and energetically. When Anunnaki came in, it was more mechanical and controlling. So, and that's why they were able to take them over a little bit easier. But because they rebelled, because they went from living a very peaceful, calm life to now you're a slave, and therefore they rebutted. They revolted. And so therefore they needed to create something else that could work more for them, bigger, stronger. So they put the two together, and a lot of them came out of bad ways, giants and stuff like this here. But for the most part, it created their other slave race, which as we know them now as the Rothschilds and all that kind of good crap. Down the generations, they have downsized themselves, but they feel like they're the ones that's the rightful owner to everything because of their DNA. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why they're called blue bloods. We have red blood and they have blue blood. That's a fact. That's a true thing that we're going to find out going forward. That's why they call them blue bloods.
But reptilians also have blue blood, right? So they have more reptilian DNA. Maybe that's
well, they have a mixture of that too, but the original reptilians, not the Dracos, the original reptilians do have green blood. Okay. And I thought that was pretty cool too, because that was part of before Gaia got invaded by the Anunnakis and everything else. Before the catastrophic thing that happened that made her leave Saturn and go to Sol, the reptilians were already on Terra. Okay, but they weren't bad. They were an underground species that worked with the Terrians, and they had a bartering system to help one another because it was a positive energy. Okay, and then whenever she got taken out of that positive energy with that chaos, and it knocked her down into 3D, and the Anunnaki took over the reptilians and controlled them with chips right off the bat, you know. So then they made them violent, evil, and they made them their go-getters. Go get it and bring it to me. They're dogs, in other words. So, but a lot of people don't realize that the reptilians, they were not evil in the beginning of this. They have been entrapped and enslaved just like we have. And now through the generations, it's got to a point where it can't be undone. So it's actually pretty sad, but most will be helped because there is good in everything. I don't care what it is, good and bad in everything.
Anything can be alchemized and
right. So, and there will be just few of them, but there will be those of the reptilians that will make it. And some of them are even hybrids, because you can't automatically assume that all hybrids are evil. You can't do that.
Yeah.
That's just wrong. So,
yeah. So, but there's that story. Sorry, I just had to ask that Enki married a Draco queen, Damkita, and that's what created Marduk. And because of the Draco reptilian dominancy of the DNA within him, well, not only that, but he kind of went, you know, a bit crazy and got high on himself and turned into what we know as Satan or Lucifer.
I get that. There's a story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a story, there was experimentation done versus, you know, sexuality happening there.
Right.
So it had to do with experimentation and science and pollution of the lines of royalty. So there was a lot of stuff going on there that was basically hidden. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they had to splice that in order to make it work, because they do have genetic abilities, you know, they've proven that. It might not be mastered, but they do have the capability of doing that. So, and that's where you get your story of Adam and Eve. You know, they were created. You know, a lot of people want to think, like the Bible, that God created them. No, they were created in a laboratory. Okay, that we call a garden. You know, but they were genetic experiments. And Lilith is true; she was the first one. Eve was not. Okay, except that Lilith she was a dominant woman. So, and she didn't want to play the lesser role, and that caused some problems. But then whenever they created Eve, then Lilith was willing to comply because she didn't want to give up her role. And pretty much she changed her whole persona and everything about her. She became a good person because she really wanted to be the mother of life. You got to think about that's an awesome role, you know. And but the bad guys has taken it to no, Lilith was bad, she spit on the man, all that kind of good stuff. And then he went to Eve because she was submissive, you know, which that is just trying to trigger us in our mindset that this is how we're supposed to be. No, Lilith made a mistake because she didn't know how to do it, and she was frightened. Everybody gets confused, but whenever it got put on the line and she realized that she was giving up that role of being the mother of everything after that, you know, she complied willingly with honor. So I don't want nobody to take that from her. Lilith is not a bad character. She's like most women. They had a decision put in front of them, and then she had to make that decision with her own feelings and emotions, so, and understanding. So
things were so different back then, you know. Sorry, we're getting kind of distracted now, but you look at some of the goddesses. The goddess
I'm sorry.
There's a goddess of sex and war and, you know, all these things, like, whoa.
Right.
You know, what was that about? I just think the consciousness and the way people operated were very different back then. So
yeah,
we can't fathom what that must have been like.
Yeah. They could see more. They've been altering history for thousands of years too. So Just being aware of that and not buying into anything unless it feels right to you is where you want to come from. We will see the Vatican Library get released, and we'll get a lot of information there. But there's a lot of stuff that's like a truth according to some being. And is that the perception that we want? Is that the whole truth? You know, so it really comes down to us in the end. Do we believe that that's the whole truth? Or is there something more?
I think we're going to be so surprised. You know, the whole story that was told to us by the Anunnaki and Sitchin, that was actually like a Freemason that wrote this whole history, and the way these things were translated. I think we're going to be quite shocked when the real truth comes out. I think it's going to be quite a bit different to what history told us.
I agree, because you can think about, you know, before we found out this information and now we know it, it woke us up. Whether or not we choose to believe it, do we go forwards and do research on it the best we can? So it's the same thing that's happening to everybody else. Are we going to accept this information because it is coming, you know, and it's better to give this information to those who are at least semi-awake, because then they can absorb it a little bit better. But because most of us, when we found out things about children and stuff, I don't think anybody was exception to the rule. That's a lot. No way. You know, it was a shock to the system. And then over time, with this information coming out, just like we're doing now, it helps people absorb it better instead of fighting it, because their DNA is waking up. And that's another thing, like Dana was talking about. The DNA serves so many different purposes. A sound, a picture, a number, a place can trigger something in your DNA. And just like all of these shows that we do, these are the wake-up calls. These are the trumpets. That's what we are, ladies. We're the trumpets that's putting out that frequency that's activating the DNA and all that we touch and talk to. And we don't even realize it. You know, some people can just do it in a touch, or just a simple word or something like this here. But you don't realize the information, it opens your mind. So how did it become open? Because something in your DNA got activated by something you heard, seen, or partake of, or was a part of. That's the purpose of what we're doing now. We're walking around, waking up all kinds of DNA. So thank you, Dana, for your contribution to waking our DNA.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. That's right.
And all of us watching too. To circle back to the locations of the arcs, just to make sure we're looking at that. Not that they need to be known, but we can guess, you know, since we're talking about them. We talked about Africa, just talking, bringing in those unknown lands that we talked about in our discussion about Africa, and the Marvel movie, Wakanda Forever. I think, honey, you were able to watch it recently. Lots of would that be a location for one of the arcs?
Where?
No.
Really? Okay.
It's not in Wakanda. Wakanda has that vibranium, and there is massive advancement there that's being hidden, and it's very deep in the jungle, just like the movie.
Right.
I feel like there's a lot more to it than the movie actually disclosed.
Right. I agree.
You know, they have the med bed, so they may actually have a lot of ET contact as well. But it doesn't mean that there's an arc there. I don't get that there's one.
There's not a large one, but there's just like there's that 30-mile one that's over in Crimea. There's other ones that are that 20, 30, 40, 50 miles long. And yes, in Wakanda, they do have one, because they even showed it in the movie, how they had the laboratories and everything else that they were doing, trying to help with the technology that they have. That was done within a facility. Now, but there is an arc there as well. The larger ones are for the major events, but these smaller ones they come in for the local reasons. Just like that one in Wakanda, that one was put there for that particular reason, for that spot. Okay, and the one that's in Crimea, the same thing. They're just smaller arcs. So, but the massive ones is the ones that's going to really ultimately surprise people, because it's going to look like a small moon or something coming out of the ground or manifesting outside of the ground. So they are absolutely enormous. And we're talking, oh my gosh. I mean, I know there's one bigger than Texas, but there's also one that's about the half the size of the United States, and I know that the one that they have up in up there by Hungary, Romania. They have one up there in Romania. Okay, because I actually got to see that it was being tampered with by 3 Russians, 3 Americans, and 3 Chinese men. They were trying to get access into it, and they were using sort of like a bomb or something that's going to ignite it against the wall to make it open up, because they couldn't get it open. Well, it counter-reacted to what it was being threatened with, and it killed them, and it's like only 3 of them got out of there. But because it shocked them, because that's its defense mechanism. But whenever they did that, they disrupted what was on the inside of it. And there happened to be a giant, a chick. Okay, her name is Hunansag or something like that. But she was in one of these stasis chambers. And what it did, it actually set it off to where it triggered it, and she couldn't get out of it. Okay. And she was actually turning bluish color, because I can see her. She's like, almost a 20-footer, and she's trying to get out and get help. And of course, the ant people and the Mayans actually came in, and the Mayan people is the one that had the DNA to get into that ark to help her. But once they walked out, it was sealed again. But she was taken to Tartaria because she had the problems being in that stasis chamber whenever it got deactivated or messed up by the guys that were doing the bomb thing. But I thought that was pretty cool that I was allowed to see that. And she definitely is an Anunnaki. Okay. But she was a scientist. And whenever all this stuff was going to go down, they were told, certain people knew, get to these arcs, save yourself, because this stuff is going to happen. Okay. And she happened to be in that one up there in Romania. And that's one she got into. But she's the only one that got into that one, believe it or not. I thought that was very surprising, considering this thing, is state size, and she was the only person in there. And that's because it was in the stasis chamber. But she is a scientist, but she is well. And so she's in Tartaria. So, and she looks like something out of a X-Men movie or the Marvels movies, because she has that the bodysuit of like they see in something on a spaceship. But she has long black hair. So, and she's very huge. She's 20 foot. So, and I actually told her to remember my name. So.
I believe these arcs are from different races as well. So the Arcturians have arcs here, the Andromedans, the Pleiadians, they all have their arcs parked here, I guess. They all have a sort of an interest in the planet in some form or another. Which is really interesting.
Well, you think if we got 22 DNAs in our system, our genetics in our system, then that would mean there's got to be at least 22 that's going to be the harbor of that information somewhere on Gaia, So that makes sense to me. That's at least 22. So now I'm aware there's 100 different races over in the Guadalupe Islands. What is their take in this? Do they have arcs here too? It makes you wonder, all these different races.
It's fascinating. And with regards to the locations, Antarctica, we already talked about the ocean. Would the Smithsonian or even the Vatican have arc? Small one.
Well, I do know that there's a smaller one over there off of the boot. Okay, I do know there's a smaller one over there, but that is not, I don't want to say that it's not ours. It's something that belonged to the Anunnaki, and they can use that. That's pretty much why they have that as the center of the world over there in Rome, in the Vatican. Okay, and but their arc is theirs. They can activate it. They can go in and out of it and stuff like this here. But it's not a weapon arc. It's like a library, and it harbors a lot of information, but they do a lot of experiments in there. So that's another one. And I do know that there is one in the middle of the United States. So, yeah. Hello, honey. Well, there is one over there. That's the reason why Colorado and those middle states are very coveted, even for these deep, deep, deep bunkers. It's because they figure, if this arc can survive there, then we can get down that low and we can survive in these here type of environments as well. But they can't access it. So, it's like I said, we need all of these here special DNA codes from these beings to come in and open them or get into them, like the Mayans did. I couldn't believe the Mayan just walked through the wall. He didn't have to do nothing. He just walked through the wall. Oh, I thought, well, it did scan him, but he had to walk through the wall, and it was because of his DNA. I thought that was pretty cool.
I was wondering, the one in Crimea, you mentioned the one in Crimea, is that also a part of the reason for the war? Because maybe it was actually Russia's, and then part of the whole color revolution thing was maybe to get hold of that area and keep that area under, the deep state control. And maybe
Right.
that's also part of the reason why Russia wanted to get that back. Firstly, because
Yeah.
it was part of their country. But secondly,
Right.
maybe there's a very important arc lying there under the
Well,
ocean.
yes, it does belong. It's kind of like it goes to the area or that part of the country. Just like we have one here in America that's in the middle. That's for the America section, okay? And then they got the one over up there in Romania, okay? And then the one off of Crimea, that one, like I said, that was probably about 30 miles. It's not a massive one, but it does go with that area over there. And they wanted to keep the Russians from getting access to it because they knew it was there. And Russia's like, no, no, no. And I do know that there's smaller ones in Iran and Iraq. And these are smaller ones. There's only 9 major ones that I'm aware of. Okay. But the other largest one is in Antarctica. And that doesn't surprise y'all, I know. The largest one is in Antarctica. And that also can tinker with, if it gets turned on, it can interrupt the magnetism of the so-called South Pole. Okay. And, but nobody can access it without the correct DNA. But that doesn't stop them from trying to get into it. Now, I know that in 2015, the good guys came in and activated it. And whenever they went on board, there was this like 40-foot blue Anunnaki dude. He was in a stasis, okay, and he had a wavy beard and wavy hair. It looked reddish, which I thought was kind of cool, the reddish with the blue. And once they woke him up, and he was part of all this before it went down, because they went into their stasis chambers knowing this stuff was going to happen. And then they were like, okay, well, our DNA, our genetics is going to take care of this. So whenever we wake up, it's a done deal. Everything's taken care of. Okay, so everybody assumed that this character was going to be bad. No, whenever he got awoken, this gentleman, this giant gentleman, he was ticked because he's seen what his so-called Rothschild and all this kind of DNA had detrimental damage to this place, and it wasn't supposed to be like that. And now the biggest thing is he's going to have to pay for their karma. And then he's like, that's not going to happen. I will not pay for what damage you did. It wasn't supposed to. So now he gave them an ultimatum. Remember, all of the countries went down there for that meeting? He gave them an ultimatum. Fix it. So, and that's what's been happening, because it's not just him, because he woke up his buddies, his crew. And these are like 40-foot giants. This is no joke. And he gave them an ultimatum. You have no choice. You fix it, because they were adamant. Because you will pay for that karma, because it came from you. You created it. Okay. And they don't want that to happen. And they needed to get it done as much as they could, especially whenever he woke up and realized that it was already in the photon belt. So then he had relations with Enki and Enlil. We need to fix this. Now, Enki went after Enlil. Enlil is gone. He is dead. But it all came down to commanding and making sure that they didn't pay for their karma. Now, the Rothschilds and stuff, that's on them. They have some severe karma on them, and they will pay for that. But the ones who's helping to fix it, that's fixing their karma. Okay.
Interesting. I heard about that meeting in Antarctica. All the world leaders were summoned. I was quite confused about that, because it was the cabal and the white hats basically gathering together for this meeting. This very secret meeting.
Right.
Anything else that you can fill in on that, Alisa?
Well, I do know that caused the ball to start rolling even more. And I don't think it's a coincidence that all of that went down in the beginning of 2015, and then Trump announces his presidency. Okay, he's going into the 2016. Okay, this is whenever the ball starts rolling. Okay, and as we can see, ever since then, there's all kinds of different things that's happened. But you can't just it's kind of like they just can't do it in one swoop. That's too catastrophic. Too many people will lose their lives. And therefore, that's going to cause more karma because you did not inform them. Okay. So, what it is, you have to allow them to wake up on their own. That way, they pay for their own karma and you don't have to pay for theirs. You've given them the chance to wake up. You're giving them the truth now, and it's their choice, not mine. Okay. And that's what's been happening. How many of us is going to wake up? How many of us is going to accept that truth, do the research, get out there and talk about it to help clear this pathway for those who are willing to wake up and join and accept that truth? So, and I'm really, really pleased that this gentleman, I'm going to call him a gentleman because I have no other thing to call him. I'm really pleased that he put his foot down and said that they fix this shit. So, and gave him no alternative. So.
Sorry, I just have a burning question. So couldn't they just go back to another place via the Stargate when all this catastrophe is coming to Earth? Couldn't they have escaped through Stargates?
Yes, they could, but whenever it all happened abruptly, like I said, a lot of them got trapped in here, and a lot of volunteers got trapped in here too because they chose to stay here to help because they knew that there was going to be a way out eventually. Okay, and so, but the portals were shut down to make sure nobody could get in and out. Okay, and this is whenever it got sealed, the dome got put on here. Nothing could get in and out of those portals. And then lo and behold, the Greys shows up. And the Greys and the Archons had so much advanced technology that they were allowed to open up one of them up there near Mount Meru, honey. And that gave them access to come in and out. But then it was like we're going to say the Anunnaki and the reptilians became the hunters of us at that time. When the Greys and the Draco came in, they made everybody their bitch. And they could not let out. They would not let the Anunnaki out, and they would not let the reptilians out. Because now you're our slave. The hunted being the hunter. The hunter being the hunted. So, and therefore nobody could have access to these here portals. And all of these people talk about the secret space program and how they wrap. No, I beg to differ. But I do understand how they're saying that. Just a quick sum up so you'll understand what I'm getting at here is a dome. You think about a half a bubble, right? Complete half a bubble. That would be a full dome. Okay, we don't have a full dome. We have what's called a quarter dome. So it's going to be a quarter of the size coming down. Well, how tall does that ceiling have to be to cover the entire 100,000 mile circle? Okay, well, think about a hand on a clock. Okay, if it's this way, okay, and there's 50,000 miles on each side of you, right? It would have to be straight up and over. That would give you that perfect dome, right? So that means that dome was 50,000 miles up if it's a half a dome. Well, it's only a quarter dome. So that means that our ceiling, our roof to this dome is 12,500 miles. So they can do all kinds of flying around and all kinds of crap up there, and we would never know. So, and that's another thing they haven't even told us. How do you cover a span that big and still keep the coverage to it? It would have to be 12,500 miles high in order to do it all the way across. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's called a quarter dome because I know they told me it's a quarter dome, not a full dome. But there is other domes. There are domes underneath the water. That's where the aquatics come in, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people don't realize this particular dome cannot be taken down by nobody except God. Okay? But that's the way that goes. But they do have the technology to make these domes. So where do you think there's other domes, ladies? There's domes on Mars. There's domes on Venus. There's domes on asteroids and so forth. We are not the only one. We have the most powerful one, but they took that knowledge and then used it against the other people in the solar system. So, and I'm thinking, see, it's not just us, but all of those have come down. That's the reason why they were rushing is because when we hit the photon belt, that photon belt is going to take those domes down whether they like it or not. So they had all kinds of prep they had to do to save these people before we hit the photon belt. But ours is God's dome. Okay, it's not going to come down until God takes it down. So I found that very fascinating and very interesting. It was like, man, this shit just keeps going. It just keeps getting more and more interesting and more deep. So.
And just to clarify, the dome, is that the firmament or the actual dome that is a frequency net, just to make that more clear?
It's a force field. It's a force field, and it was encased with ice on both sides of that force field. They made it look like a giant igloo, okay? But that ice and stuff is gone. You know, honey is aware of that too. But the frequency is still there. Okay, it's like if we could see it, it would be like we're looking through a fish bowl, a glass ball. Okay, but because they still control the skies to our benefit now to keep things going, they can do that on project it as well. But before it was all with the ice encasing, and you got to think about that. If it was all pure ice, that's a perfect movie theater. But it comes up right to the atmosphere of Gaia. Okay. Now, this is another thing I found out because she is a super Earth. Okay. She's 600,000 miles around. So her atmosphere you don't even pop out into space until you get to about 13,000 miles. And here they're telling us it's about 70 or 90. So that's that because she's so massive, her bubble is going to be a little bit bigger. Okay. That she sits inside of. And the dome sits right there at the top of the atmosphere down. So that's why it was so cold. Like, honey, remember when you were talking about the blue ice and stuff like that there? That's why it's so close to that top part of that atmosphere. It does just that to the ice, or did that to the ice. So
Fascinating.
So before we go, I want to say something about fourth density.
Okay.
We're in the process of letting go of fourth density, which is mostly where all of this stuff happened. And it's exiting and remembering that we're going into a higher density is important. Don't get too caught up. And it's very interesting, but it's also part of the chaos that we've experienced. And it was our learning experience to go through this process. So remembering that we're letting that go, and the arcs will help us with that. And we may not see all of them open.
Right.
So only a few could open. The one in Wakanda, I mean, I see it as a scientific thing that's already open.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, just remembering that we're letting go of all of this activity, that the grays are gone, the archons have been gone for a while. A lot of these ETs have exited at this point. I think that's important because our thoughts are extremely powerful. So we want to let them exit so that we can go into the next process. And the energies have completely changed at this point. And it's absolutely beautiful, the amount of drama that we've gone through to get to this point, but we're there. So we've entered the age of Aquarius at this point, and that happened yesterday. But we're kind of in a huge shift right now. And we can see this as the history of how we got here. So it's a beautiful thing. And we could get upset about it, but I would not get upset about it. If you're feeling stressed by the conversation in any way, it's something that's over. And it's been an amazing experience. And a lot of us have had more access to it than others. But you're going to get to hear about it and see it, but you're not going to experience it again because those beings are exiting.
Somebody actually said something that really struck me that I listened to today. We kind of needed some of this darkness because, you know, tension creates evolution. So all this pressure and tension on us, in a way, we kind of also, in a strange way, wanted that, because we wanted to evolve the human consciousness. So we had to go through all these things. And it's hard for some people to hear, because, you know, you just want to kind of say, well, these are all evil people and we didn't deserve it and blah, 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 blah. But actually, in a way, it really allowed the human consciousness to evolve in a way that it wouldn't have otherwise. So it's kind of a tricky concept.
Well, for me, it's kind of like, you know, I got to see it and be there. And one of my in the future, and I was asking, you know, well, how did this happen? How did we get here? And it's like I got sucked back. It says, now I'm going to show you how it happened. I'm like, and that's what we've been going through. It showed me how all this happened. And I'm like, I can see it. It's like I'm in the movie. I'm in the soap opera, you know, and I've seen the end result of it. But then I asked that question: how did it get to this point? How did we do this? Suck me back. Now you're going to show you how we did it. And I'm like, okay. So I got to keep reminding myself of that I already been there, seen it. I know it's real. I know it exists. But now I have to go through the bumps and waves like everybody else does that got us to that point. I'm no exception to the rule, you know. But it is fascinating to see the story play out before me. And I've already seen the highlight of, not the end of the movie, but the highlights towards the end of the movie. So,
Yeah.
The credits
Yeah,
are
it's a
about to
beautiful
roll.
movie.
That's right. And, you know, we're all going through a lot of things. Like just in the hour we've been talking, I've gotten text messages from my son's school that he needs a new pair of underwear. My husband had to go run out. I was texting back and forth. You know, my dog's barking, so I put on mute for a little while. But, you know, honey, your heater went out, you're, you know, bundled up. And, you know, Alisa, you're on your phone for certain reasons. And Anina, I'm sure you had that move recently. So we're all in it. We're all going through that, you know, the end of the chaos, whatever you want to call it. But we're all doing it together. And just know that no matter what you're going through right now, you can handle it. Go into nature, ground if you can. You know, get shoes that if you're in a cold environment, get shoes that are leather underneath instead of rubber, so you can still ground with shoes on. But Mother Nature is here to help us and just clean all of it up. And I just wanted to talk about the what Mother Nature provides us. The vibranium, I think, is fascinating. It's probably better for another show.
Yeah.
But also, I've been watching the Rings of Power on Amazon Prime, the Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion visualization for the videos, and they talk a lot about mithril. So why are they spending so much money on this production to present mithril to humanity? So and then there's the vibranium. So maybe that's another show, but just knowing that there's so much beauty on the planet Earth that we have yet to learn about and tap into, but it is here for us, just like the arcs and the Ark of the Covenant as well, even though that's a more biblical, that's an arc as well, maybe a smaller version of it, but just fascinating.
It is. Well, I'm excited. The future's so bright. I gotta wear shades.
Exactly.
So,
But this
if
time we're
anybody's
not
looking for,
wearing
you know,
any
good tunes,
shades.
go over there and check out my music. If you need good words, good vibes, and everything else to help you lift your spirits or keep you in a good state of mind, I'm always, you know, encouraging people to listen to good music. So.
Absolutely. We'll leave the links below so people can get into the vibe.
Yeah.
Honey, you wanted to say something?
I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
But Dayna, you brought up an important or interesting point, the Ark of the Covenant. So how does that link into the arcs? What is the relationship? Why is it also called an ark when it's actually something small? Some people say that ark is actually within us. Anyone with any insight on that?
It's within and without. So it's just like the universe is formed. You know, how you have as above, so below, all those things. There's always a microcosm and a macrocosm. And we're not ready to know the whole story of the Ark of the Covenant yet, is what I'm getting. So that will be revealed later, probably when we know we're in the 5D, because we're pretty much in it at this point, but our mind doesn't know it yet. So when our mind is ready, we'll find out.
Exactly. Well, ladies, I thank you for inviting me to do this today, but I do have an appointment that I have to get to. So, and I thank you for the invite and the wonderful company and just you lovely ladies and all your feminine energy. Makes me appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was
Have a
awesome. Good to see
beautiful
you again,
appointment.
Elisa.
Thank you
Yeah.
all.
Yes. And
Thank you.
ladies,
Good to see
enjoy
you
the
all.
rest of your day.
This was a pleasure.
Mhm.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Lots of love. Bye.